Welcome to Changing the Game, where bold leaders, rule breakers, and trailblazers drop the playbook and share how they lead, win, and shake things up. Hello, everyone. My name is Duren, and I am the host of Changing the Game. Changing the Game was created to share leadership insights and inspiration from female professionals who are out there making a difference in their industry. Today, I'm joined by Ericka Ayers Badan. A lot of listeners might know her as the former and first ever CEO of Barstool Sports. Erika has led the company through explosive growth from a regional blog to a national brand. She's now the CEO of Food52 and author of the book, Nobody Cares About Your Career: Why Failure is Good, The Great Ones Play Hurt, and Other Hard Truths. Welcome, Erika.
Thank you. Hi.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have you here. I know the listeners are very excited to have you here for you to share all of your insights and your inspiration from your career with us. So
awesome.
Yeah, let's kick it off right away. I'd love if you could share a little bit more about what you were like growing up. Let's take it all the way back to the beginning. Tell us about your background before your professional career.
Oh God, I think I was like a problem. I don't know. I was kind of rambunctious. I think always very creative. I grew up in kind of a weird household where my dad was my middle school principal and my mom was a teacher. So my brother and I were latchkey kids. We had to fight over an hour of television. We had one TV in our house and we were allowed 1 hour of television, and we would duke it out every week about like, what are we watching? And finally, it was like probably where I learned how to negotiate. We figured out how to share the hour versus like me wanting to watch Gem and him wanting to watch MacGyver. But I had a fun childhood. I read a lot. I played a ton of sports. I got in trouble a bunch. I played sports in college. I went to Colby College. I went to public high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. I feel like I'm still figuring that out. So I guess, I had kind of like, I think a typical New England childhood.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And it kind of makes sense. I actually see on the back of this book, the book is not for people who like following rules, right?
Yes, I have. When your dad is your middle school principal, it gives you like plenty of authority issues. So, I think rules are there for a reason, but also they're there to be broken. And I think one of the things that, especially people trying to make something of themselves and make something of their life and make something of their career, you kind of have to figure it out on your own, and not every rule works for you and not every rule is meant to help you. So I think, having a good, healthy defiance for the rules, an appreciation of them and a defiance against them, I think can be really healthy.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you there. Actually, that was one of the first things that spoke to me in your book, was you saying that it's not for people who like rules. I've been told a time or two in my life by my parents, love them so much, but they've said, you have a problem with authority sometimes. So I think
that's a good thing.
Can be a little healthy strength at times.
Yeah, definitely.
I love it. So speaking of your book, I loved it. Obviously felt like you were speaking directly to me in it. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of writing your book? What inspired you, and really, what does the title mean?
Yeah. So, I started this book a couple years ago. I pretty much wrote it on the train on my phone. So commuting to New York City. And I was writing it for a couple reasons. One is we had just sold Barstool Sports to Penn, and this crazy pirate ship, wild world of like chaos and inventing things every day and figuring stuff out and experimenting constantly was really changing. And my job was becoming very different. And my job was becoming much more about rules and much more about, hey, the financial forecast, how much money are you going to make next month? How compliant can you be? So I was really feeling the loss of the creativity of the last, 8-9 years before, where, anything was possible and anything was probable at any given minute at Barstool. So I was missing that, and I was missing a creative outlet, which really prompted me to write the book. And then the second piece of it was I was getting at that point, and more now, a lot of DMs with people with work questions. So whether it was on LinkedIn or it was on Instagram or it's on TikTok, just getting a ton of DMs about, hey, my boss is an idiot. How would you deal with this situation? And there's a large chapter in the book about when your boss is an idiot, because most bosses are idiots, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But the title is important. I didn't have the title in mind when I wrote the book. It was really like, I think the publisher thought this was going to be like kind of a small book, and I just kept writing and writing and writing and writing. But I do think it's important. It's one of the chapters in the book, and nobody cares about your career is something I've always said to myself through my whole entire life, and mostly when I was making a decision that I felt was the right decision for me, but most other people would say was not. Going to Barstool Sports, one of those type decisions. And I think the thing that's really important is, one is nobody's coming to help you. So you need to be accountable to your own happiness and to your own, your own path and what you want to be, using work to be something greater or something different in your life. I think work is tuition, and it's the greatest vehicle you can use to change. So, one, just, you are there to help you. You may think you're an idiot. You may think you're not perfect, or you're not good at this and you're not good at that. And the reality is you're right, but you're also the best person to make your future. And I never liked when other people told me what to do. And I think you should tell yourself what to do. And then the second thing is, I think the things that hold people back at work are either your insecurity, where you're like, I'm not good enough, or I don't know enough, or what if I get it wrong, or I fail. And the other thing that holds you back is your ego, when you're like, I'm too good for this. I don't have anything to learn. I know it all. I've done it all. I don't need to lower myself. Like, I think both of those things are kind of bullshit, and you need to put them in the back seat. And you need to give yourself to your everyday, because work can be an enormous catalyst for change. And I think doing things for you and for the right reasons that will make you happy and fulfilled is really what anybody should want from a job.
Yeah, amen. And you had mentioned that you overcame a lot of noise, or you just received a lot of noise and opinions from people when you decided to take the role at Barstool. How did you really overcome that adversity, that noise? And I guess, how would you encourage other people who are maybe getting that same thing when deciding to make a career change?
Oh, I think career changes are great. Like, people shit all over me for taking this job at Food52. Like, why would you ever do that? That's a lesser job. Like, the peanut gallery always has so much to say. And the reality is people who have a lot to say aren't usually busy doing very much. And the reality is they don't really care that deeply. And, that's also a reason for the title of the book. When I took the job at Barstool Sports, I was fired from the 2 boards I was on, ceremoniously, dumped. And most of my network was like, I don't really get that. They hadn't heard of Barstool Sports, or they didn't like Barstool Sports. And I think it was really good for me personally, because I needed a job that where my back was up against the wall, and where I had something to prove that was highly, highly motivating to me with the Barstool job. And I think if you're making a career change, let's say you want to pursue something that you're really passionate about, but doesn't make so much sense on paper, or you got a degree in one thing and you want to do something else, or you've spent 10 years doing a certain type of job and you want to make a change, that voice inside of you that says you need to make a change is not going to go away. The noise from other people is going to go away. And you also, in my experience anyways, you can ignore the noise, but you can't ignore that voice inside of you. And I think that's the voice to listen to. And the reality is, when I took the Barstool job, everyone had an opinion about what was wrong with Barstool, or the problem with Dave, or this, that, or the other thing, that after a while it was so loud that for me personally, I was like, I'm either going to spend my entire day explaining why Barstool's great to people who don't really care and are never going to believe it, or I can just spend my time making Barstool great. And I think that's a lesson that anyone can take into their career, and honestly, anyone can take into their life, which is, you have this choice. You can either explain to the peanut gallery what you're doing and justifying why you feel like that's a good idea. Or you can just get busy doing it and kind of like pound sand to everybody else. And I'm kind of in the latter camp, and I think it all works out.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had mentioned you felt like you had a little something to prove in there. And I mean, you certainly did prove yourself. You were up against, I think I read 74 men for the Barstool job. I work with a lot of women actually here at Shift Group who are pursuing careers in sales, and they know that they might be one of the only women in the room when they go into sales. So I'm just wondering, do you have any, I guess, can you talk a little bit about what this was like? And do you have any encouragement for women who are in the modern workplace in this scenario?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm still, outside of work here where it's, predominantly female and women. Look, I don't think it's the worst thing to be the only woman in the room. I also don't think you should use your gender, whatever your gender may be, as an excuse for like not becoming who you want or getting what you want or doing what you're capable of. I tend to put my gender out there, which is like, hey, I'm, I think fairly obviously a woman. And then I take it away, which is like, I'm not here to like look pretty or act a certain way, or I just want to get work done. And I think the more that women can show up at the table and just like put aside this whole like, ooh, I'm different than all of you, or feelings of inferiority or feelings of intimidation, like you just got to swallow that. And you've got to, I always tried to work harder than everybody else in the room and to be sure that I knew what I was talking about. If you know what you're talking about, it doesn't matter what color you are, what shape you are, what planet you're from, what your gender is, like people will listen to you. I wouldn't be afraid to be like, let me finish when people cut you off, which will happen. I say that all the time. I had this boss once. I had a boss when I was in Boston who, she was pretty scary and powerful, but when she was talked over, she just got really, really quiet, and she made her voice, like she didn't speak up, she spoke down. And it made everybody like triple pay attention. So like you can get people to pay attention to you. I tend to, at this point, I'm fairly mouthy, I guess, where, if I'm in a room with all men, we did a banking partner review for one of the boards I'm on, and I was always the only woman in the meeting, and I was like, guys, this is like embarrassing, it's ridiculous, it's like, could you at least just get a woman on your team? So I don't think it's good for people, I think, to say that if you're in a position of authority or a position of comfort to do so. But in general, if you're a salesperson, like know your product, advocate for your product, speak well of your product, listen to other people, and don't be afraid to show up as you are, and including as a woman.
Yeah, show up as you are. I think the authenticity piece is so important. That will shine through above everything else. If you show up in the room authentic and knowing the value that you bring, I think that will help you rise above all. So
definitely. I mean, the people who don't do well in meetings, hopefully it's not because of your gender. I think the people that don't do well in sales pitches or meetings they either talk too much and they don't listen. They don't know their product as intimately as well as they could. They don't read the room to understand what people are interested in, and they don't care enough to follow up. I think if you do those things, like you'll crush whatever you do.
Yeah, I agree. And you've done a lot. I mean, you've worked with a lot of different people. You've hired a lot of different people. And one thing that we believe here at Shift Group is resumes really are just, they're paper. They're a little old. They're antiquated. They don't really tell the whole story of what somebody has to offer. Can you talk a little bit about hiring in today's digital world? And I guess, what do you look for in candidates during the hiring process?
That's a great question. I also cannot stand a resume. Like I was on LinkedIn this morning, and I'm like the biggest LinkedIn fan ever. I love LinkedIn. But I'm like reading through all the jargon. It's so jargony. Like the job descriptions are jargony. I was looking for a VP supply chain this morning, and I'm like looking at what all the companies post. And sometimes when I read a menu at a restaurant, especially if I go to a fancy restaurant, and they have all the like highfalutin words for the items, I'm like, chicken, mushrooms. Like I try to
Yeah.
break it down. It's the same thing for a job description. Like don't use all the fluffy strategery words. Just say what you do and say what you've accomplished and say what you're interested in and then get out of there. I think I don't spend a lot of time looking at resumes. I don't care where people went to college. I don't really even care what their GPAs were. Like, I care that you are doing something to make yourself stand out if you really want a job. So at Barstool, we had this immense luxury of there were so many people that wanted to work there. We would post a job and have 10,000 people apply for it. But the reason that was special, I mean, it was a pain in the ass because you had to go through so many resumes. But what made it really special was the people who really wanted the jobs went the extra mile and they did something creative to stand out. So, like, I write about this in the book a lot. I wanted to work for Converse, like, for half of my life. And every month I would apply to work at Converse and I'd apply again to work at Converse and then I would apply again to work at Converse. But I never did anything special to get a job at Converse and therefore I didn't. So I think if you really want a job, like DM people, send a note on LinkedIn, write a physical letter. Like I know that sounds so antiquated. Like at Barstool, I had somebody make a movie poster to get a job. I had somebody make a book. We had somebody put a resume on a pizza box. Like that person is going to get a sales job if you care that much to get a job. I had a woman apply at Food52 and she baked me cookies with a Food52 recipe. And I was like,
Brilliant.
that's smart, So I don't know if that's a helpful answer, Jordan, or not, but that's how I think about it.
Yeah, that is 100% a great answer. It's going above and beyond, not just applying for the job and sending that old antiquated resume out there and hoping and praying. It's going above and beyond, doing something to stand out. And on the other side of that coin, I'd love to know if you have any advice for companies on getting it right. Like hiring the right candidate is so important. So
it's so hard.
Yeah.
I think you get it wrong more than you get it right, to be honest with you. And I think the place I think companies get it really wrong is when somebody isn't right, you don't do something about it. You let it hang around. This bad feeling or this misfitting hang around. I think the big thing for companies to get it right, one, you have to be clear on what is this job and what are you looking for and what are the characteristics that you need. So, I'll give you an example. I'm looking for a head of corporate development for me. And the reality is I'm not great at math. I need somebody who can open up my brain, take out all my ideas and put it into a financial model. And that's truly the job. I'm and having an MBA, sure, going to Harvard, great. But really, I need you to think in a financial model. And I went through a whole bunch of candidates, and what I realized was when we briefed someone, when we wrote the job description and we did the initial interviews for the candidates, nobody said that one sentence, which is, hey, you got to be great at financial modeling. Can you do a financial model? Tell me an example of how you've done a financial model. And so we wasted a lot of candidates' time. And then it was wasting a lot of my time because I was I'm meeting with all these people and nobody can make a model. So I think being really clear on this is the skill we need, or this is the DNA we want. Sometimes you're hiring for people who can handle chaos. I tend to create a lot of chaos where I work. So I need people who can work in a huge, fast moving place with a lot of ambiguity. There's a lot of people who want control and rules and stability and consistency. I'm not your girl. So when we hire people, I want to make sure we say that. And I think if companies were more clear on, hey, here's the DNA we need and here's the skill we want, and not putting 4,000 things in each, 3 things in each, I think that would make that process much better.
Yeah, just being more clear upfront about
blunt. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's so important too. And I kind of want to go back. I know we jumped right into your move to Barstool, but
Yeah.
I do want to backtrack a little bit to the beginning of your career. Read in your book that you started in the legal department at Fidelity Investments. I just would like if you could lay it out a little bit for us. How did you go from starting in the legal department at Fidelity to becoming the CEO of two companies? Obviously, that doesn't happen overnight. So what was that journey like for you, making that change and getting to where you are now?
Oh, like long and crazy and, full of pitfalls. I got an internship in college as a receptionist at Fidelity. And I write about this in the book. I had my job was to just stare at this glass door and press a button and let people in. And I was bored. So I sucked up every job I could possibly do instead of being a receptionist. I still opened the door for everybody, but while I was waiting for people to come to the door, I found myself busy. And that's how I got my first job at Fidelity. I was a receptionist in the legal group, and then I got a job in the legal department. And I was excited about it. I was like, ooh, this feels like fancy. Like nobody in my family's ever been a lawyer or worked in a city or been in a corporate job. Like how great. Of course I want to be a lawyer. And then I started to realize what it meant to be a lawyer and to unpack what a lawyer at a big investment firm meant. And I was like, I hate all of this. Like, this is beige. This is terrible. This is about risk mitigation. It's about retirement plans. Like, I was like, I can't even fathom retiring. Like, I'm not saving any money. This is not for me. So I took a really big pay cut and I took a big jump to go work in the advertising group. And that was a really good experience for me because one, nobody thought I should do it. Two, it was insanely painful. I was making like $50,000 and then I was making $17,000 and, had a whole bunch of credit card debt. Like it was painful. Wow. But it opened up and it got me my first job in the internet. And once I started working the internet, I never looked back. I got laid off from that job, which is like anybody who's been laid off is like a mind trip. It's like debilitating. You feel unworthy and it's just crushes your ego and it makes you feel insecure. And I write a lot about this. And then I scrapped my way to a bunch of other jobs and I started working in a bunch of ad agencies, which I loved. I felt working in an agency was awesome tuition. And I really believe every job you take should really open up 5 new jobs for you. I never thought I would ever be a CEO. I didn't have any designs on being a CEO. I thought I wanted to be a CMO. But every job I took, I was always very, very, very sensitive that it would open other jobs for me. And, that included when I was living in Boston, I was getting kind of paranoid that there weren't going to be any jobs left. I was always very insecure about not having a job. And so then I moved to New York and carried on from there and moved into publishing, which is really where, I fell in love. That was really kind of my sweet spot. But I think anybody's career, mine included, is very meandering. I worked at a lot of big companies. I worked at a lot of small companies. I worked at a lot of really stupid companies that didn't go anywhere. I worked at successful companies that were successful until they were disasters. And I was all of those things too. So I think, the lesson I would give, I guess, is that you gotta just keep pushing yourself to learn new things and do new things. You have to have a vision for yourself, which I write a lot about in the book. And your vision doesn't have to be a fancy thing. And it's really just, what do you want to get out of this? And where are you trying to get to next? And once you get there, then you can figure out what's that next place and the place after that. But I think the big thing is just to keep pushing and then just to be really honest with yourself when you do get to that place. I got the CMO job at AOL and I bought myself a watch and I had the business card and I was so excited. And then I was like, oh God, I hate this job. I want anything but this job. That was tough because I was like, oh shit, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know who I want to be. I don't know what this means because that was all I ever wanted. So I think just going on this journey and then assessing all the time and not being afraid to change, I think can be hugely freeing.
Yeah, Erika, I love that story because it's such proof that a career path is not linear. It's not ever linear. You can, and once you arrive at the hypothetical like destination, like you became the CMO, you still had the courage to say, okay, maybe this isn't what I thought it was. I'm going to maybe just take a step in a different direction, and having the confidence to know that that's not a step back. It's just
Definitely.
there's no such thing as a step back. It's just a step in a different direction.
Yeah.
I love that story.
Oh, that's great. I think that's why like the nobody cares thing is important. For me, I've had a couple moments in my career, including right now, where I took a weird step in a different direction than I think people expected that I would take. And that's, if I have any message from what I've done, is like, that is totally okay. Like, it's nobody's business besides yours. And you know what? Maybe you're going to bomb at it, or maybe it's not going to work. Like, I worked at a bunch of startups that were just failures, and I had talked them up as like, ooh, I'm going to make this big move, I'm going to do this thing, and then the thing didn't work out. But I really do believe that most people are optimists. I'm an optimist, and that even if that next gig or that risk you took or that jump you made doesn't work, that you will see the silver lining in it, and you will say, if I hadn't done this thing, this other thing wouldn't have happened. So I think you just got to be good to yourself and kind to yourself, of even if something isn't perfect doesn't mean it won't work out.
I love that. It's the optimism, but that leads me to, or it reminds me of something else you talked about in your book a lot, is you're really not afraid of failure. In fact, you embrace a lot of failure. You had a phrase that you talked about in the book. I'd love if you could just share a little bit more on that mentality around failure and where that came from and how you developed that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still working on it. It's uncomfortable to fail. Obviously, like, doesn't feel good. You look stupid. It like is kind of embarrassing. But one thing that I have this phrase, which you talked about, Jordan, which is like fail always. Like, you should be in fail always mode. And the reason I like fail always mode is, don't be afraid of failure, because the reality is you're human and you're fallible and you are going to fail. So like, I started to feel like, at least in my career, like it was kind of inefficient to be worrying about failure because it was going to happen. I'd rather worry about things that I could prevent from happening versus the idea that I wouldn't be successful all the time, because I couldn't assure that. I fail all the time. I fail everything every single day. I get on the train home or the ferry home after work, and I'm like, oh shoot, I should have done this differently, or I wish I had done that differently, or I don't like how I responded to this, or I wish I had not reacted to that, or whatever. I think it's good to be always having that like running monologue with yourself of things you would have done differently. And what failure means to me is two things. One is that you're putting yourself in an environment where you don't know everything. And I think that's really important because it shows that you're getting out of your comfort zone and it shows that you're growing. The second is that you are trying things and you are iterating. You're trying to figure it out. When I was learning how to play hockey, I picked up hockey at, I don't know, 40 something. Like,
Love that.
and it was a disaster. I looked like an idiot, and like, my skates were wobbly, and I didn't know how to pick one leg up over the other. But you have to look stupid and fail so that it's part of the journey to figuring it out. And now I can skate, but I wasn't going to go from, I think we live in this kind of like Instagram, TikTok bubble where the perception is you're going to be perfect all the time. And there's not a journey to get there. And the more you can give yourself to the journey, the faster you're going to learn to skate.
Amen. I love that. Erika, I want to respect your time because I know we're about
Yeah.
here. So I just have two speed round questions for you.
Okay.
We talked a little bit about failure. I'd love to know just what is one of your proudest accomplishments in your career?
Oh, I don't even know. I love to work. I'm so happy that I still love to work so much.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's an accomplishment in itself. You're learning and
yeah,
still growing
figure it out
every day. Awesome. And then final question for you. I just work with a lot of candidates here who are considering changing careers. They're embarking on their career adventure for the first time in their lives, post-college or post-athletic professional career. So I just would love to know if you have any advice for them. How would you encourage them as they're starting out in their new careers?
Oh, you got to go for it. So, you got to work your ass off in your 20s. It doesn't matter where you start. I think people get really hung up that you should start at someplace great. Like maybe you'll start at someplace great or maybe you'll start at like a total dumpster fire. Like who knows? Don't worry about that. Just start and then show up every day open to learning something. I think I try to show up every day ready to learn from somebody. And I really actually don't even care who, just somebody who can teach me something. And I think if you approach your life that way and your work that way and show gratitude when people do teach you, you will grow and you will expand and you will move to a place that you'll be really proud of and excited about.
Yeah, you can learn from anybody.
Absolutely.
I'm so with you there. Erika, thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful for it. I know our listeners are so grateful for it. Follow Erika on LinkedIn, everyone. I love your daily advice that you do. Ask Erika's. Those are awesome. So everyone follow Erika
Great.
there.
And then quick shout out to my guy, George. So I'm just giving a shout out to George at Shift. I love that, George.
He's going to love that.
Thank you, Jordan, so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Erika. You have a great day. And thank you, everyone, for listening.